Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking on a really complex web of evidence. We're looking at court transcripts, newspaper reports, all from the 1920s, to understand what was probably the most devastating scandal of the entire silent film era.
We really are. We're diving into the trial that absolutely killed a man's career, even though he, walked free in the end.
And as you requested, we're starting this whole deep dive with the conclusion of the case, which is just it's extraordinary. This isn't just a verdict. It's a full declaration from the jury after the third manslaughter trial of Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle in 1922.
Just listen to how sweeping this is. The exoneration, it's total.
Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done him. We feel also that it was only our plain duty to give him this exoneration, for there was not the slightest proof adduced to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. He was manly throughout the case and told a straightforward story, which we all believed.
It keeps going. The happening at the hotel was an unfortunate affair for which Arbuckle, so the evidence shows, was in no way responsible. We wish him success and hope that the American people will take the judgment. That Roscoe Arbuckle is entirely innocent and free from all blame.
I mean, wow. Entirely innocent and free from all blame.
Right. It's arguably the most total legal vindication a celebrity has ever received. So our mission, based on all the chaotic sources you shared, is to really unpack how Arbuckle's defense pulled that off. How do you go from these screaming headlines accusing you of murder to that?
Okay, let's set the scene. We're in San Francisco. It's September 1921, Labor Day weekend.
The St. Francis Hotel, 12th floor.
And Roscoe Arbuckle is, he's at the absolute peak. He's the world's most recognizable comedian, and he has just signed a $1 million contract with Paramount.
Which was just, unbelievable money for the time. He's one of the highest paid stars on the planet. So the minute this story breaks, you know it's going to be a worldwide sensation.
So he arrives with his director, Fred Fishback, and an actor, Lowell Sherman. And they have this 3-room suite.
Right. Room 1219 for Arbuckle and Fishback, 1221 for Sherman, and then 1220 was sort of the designated party room.
And a party room it was. You have to remember, this is the Jazz Age. Prohibition is the law of the land, which of course means all the drinking and parties happen behind closed doors.
And this was described as a pretty boisterous drinking brunch, dancing, music, kidding around.
And into this scene walks Virginia Rep.
And she wasn't just some chorus girl. The sources are pretty clear. She was a very determined model, a fashion designer. They called her the best-dressed girl in Hollywood.
She arrives with her companion, a woman named Maud Delmont, after getting a call that there might be some modeling work. So they go up to the St. Francis.
And the party is, it's fueled by gin and orange juice, a lot of it. And this is where the crisis begins. Rapé, according to testimony, drinks a lot of it. We're talking 3 pint glasses.
And then she becomes violently ill.
Exactly. She's found later in Arbuckle's room, 1219, just in agony, excruciating pain in her lower abdomen. So the other party guests, they try to help her. Arbuckle is seen carrying her down the hall to another room to get her some space, and a doctor is called.
But this is where the facts of what happened just collide with this moral outrage that convicted him in the press from day one.
Right.
There was testimony that Arbuckle later told a hotel manager that he'd pushed ice into her vagina to try and wake her up.
And that detail, whether it was relevant to her death or not, it was just poison. It completely poisoned the public well against him.
So how did the defense possibly recover from a headline like that?
Well, that's the thing. They couldn't. They knew they couldn't control that moral narrative, so they had to control the legal one. And that meant shifting the blame, not just from Arbuckle, but onto the witnesses, and crucially, onto Rappy's own history.
Okay, so let's get into that. Let's talk about the key players in the prosecution's case, or, the collapse of it. Starting with the star witness who never actually testified.
Maud Delmont.
The woman who signed the murder complaint. And she was never called to testify in any of the 3 trials.
Never. It's a huge strategic failure, but... Well, the prosecutors really didn't have a choice. The sources all say that Delmont, they called her Bambina Maud, was considered impossible to work with.
Why? What was so impossible about her?
Her story was it was all over the place. It kept changing on the most fundamental point. Did Arbuckle drag Rappia into the room, or did Rappia go in willingly to use the bathroom? You can't have your star witness waffling on something like that.
So the initial accuser was so unreliable, they couldn't risk putting her on the stand.
Exactly. Her shifting story made her useless for proving any kind of criminal intent.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, she gets arrested on a bigamy charge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the prosecution knew If they put a known bigamist on the stand as their primary accuser, the defense would tear her apart. It would have been a guaranteed mistrial or acquittal.
And the problems for the prosecution didn't stop there. I mean, other witnesses were literally running away.
They were. This showgirl, Zay Prevost, she fled San Francisco for New Orleans. She even registered under a fake name, Zay Bell Elrue, just to dodge the subpoena.
And when she was found?
She told a reporter that Arbuckle was, and I'm quoting, absolutely innocent. She claimed the whole scandal was just manufactured by would-be reformers.
So with the witness pool just collapsing, that must have opened the door wide open for the defense team.
It did. The lead lawyer, Gavin McNabb, he launched this incredibly aggressive two-pronged counterattack. And the first prong was just a frontal assault on the prosecution itself.
What do you mean?
He stood up in court and accused the district attorney, Matthew Brady, of organized terrorism and fabricating testimony. But his most effective attack was on a witness named Virginia Brieg. She was a bookkeeper at the hospital where Rapp died.
Right, and she was critical. She claimed she heard Rapp's deathbed statement.
He killed me.
Yes.
So how did McNabb counter that? It sounds damning.
He destroyed her credibility by exposing her financial motives.
You see, the sources show Brieg had tried to collect Rappe's overdue hospital bill from Arbuckle's defense team, and she'd tried to charge for a full week in advance.
So he made it look like she was trying to extort them.
Precisely. McNabb created this brilliant legal paradox. For the prosecution's case to work, Rappe had to be dying when she made that statement. But for the hospital to bill for a week, she had to be considered living. It made Brieg's testimony look like a cynical cash grab, not the words of a dying woman.
And the second prong of that strategy.
That was, the brutal character assassination of Virginia Rapp herself. The prosecution's whole case rested on her being a normal, healthy young woman.
And the defense set out to prove she was the exact opposite.
They absolutely did. And this is where you see the legal double standards of the 1920s just fully weaponized. They brought in witness after witness who claimed Rapp had a history of hysterical fits when she drank.
Specifically fits where she would tear off her own clothes. Yes, which they used to explain what happened in room 1219. They painted a picture of a woman with a history of wild behavior and an active sexual life, and contrasted that with testimony about Arbuckle's gentlemanly conduct.
So the whole narrative shifts. Rappe wasn't the victim of a crime, she was the author of her own demise.
Exactly, and that leads us straight to the medical pivot, which was probably the most important piece of the puzzle. The defense argued that Rappe died from a spontaneous rupture of the bladder, something totally unrelated to Arbuckle.
Okay, so how did they make that sound credible to a jury? What was the science behind it?
Well, the core theory was about the alcohol. She drank 3 pints of gin and juice without, using the bathroom. This causes severe bladder distension. The defense brought in medical textbooks, like Gutierrez Urology, which said a sudden jolt or a fall.
And she might have fallen on the tub.
Right. A sudden shock can cause a rupture, especially if the bladder wall is already weak. But slow pressure won't do it.
And they had evidence her bladder wall was weak.
They did. This is why their expert testimony was so powerful. They had witnesses testify that Rappe had suffered from chronic cystitis inflammation of the bladder and pelvic pain for years. It provided a plausible, non-criminal cause of death that completely undercut the prosecution's story.
So they didn't have to prove Arbuckle was innocent. They just had to introduce reasonable medical doubt.
And that's all a jury needs. And then, finally, Arbuckle himself took the stand in the third trial.
He'd been silent until then, which probably didn't look great.
Right, on his lawyer's advice. But it was a crucial move. The sources describe him as clear and steady. They dressed him in this conservative dark blue suit. I mean, they took the world's biggest comedian and made him look like a banker.
And his story was simple. He was just a good Samaritan. He found her sick on the floor and tried to help.
And by that point, what was the jury supposed to believe? The prosecution's witnesses were discredited, their star accuser was a bigamist, their deathbed statement looked like extortion, and now there was this perfectly reasonable medical explanation.
The combination was it was irresistible, which brings us back to that verdict.
5 minutes. The jury was out for 5 minutes before delivering that incredible detailed statement. They didn't just find him not guilty, they actively went out of their way to absolve him.
But legally, he was freer. He was innocent under the law. But the price had already been paid, hadn't it?
Oh, completely. The media coverage. I mean, William Randolph Hearst told his papers to sell more copies on this than on the sinking of the Lusitania. His name was just permanently linked to indecency and scandal, no matter what the jury said.
And this frenzy led directly to Hollywood's new moral police.
Will H. Ace, the movie czar. He used the Arbuckle scandal and the murder of William Desmond Taylor a bit later as the justification he needed to clean up Hollywood.
And this was really about politics, wasn't it? Hollywood was under huge pressure from Washington, from religious groups. They were all demanding censorship.
Exactly. So to stop the government from stepping in, Hayes created his own system of control, the Hayes Code. And Arbuckle, despite being fully exonerated, became the first and biggest sacrificial lamb. He was banned from the screen.
And the ban destroyed everything, not just his career, his personal life, too. His wife, Minta Durfee, she'd stood by him through all 3 trials.
But once the ban came down and his status, his money was all gone, she left. The relationship was over.
He did make a small comeback, didn't he, later on?
He did. First under a pseudonym, but then in 1932 he got to star in and direct 6 short talkies under his own name. It was the first time audiences actually heard his voice, which was described as a pleasant second tenor.
It's just such a tragic end. The day after he finally signs a contract for a feature film, a real comeback, he dies in his sleep, a heart attack at 46.
And reportedly, the night before he died, he'd said, "This is the best day of my life."
So when you synthesize all of this, that jury statement, acquittal is not enough, it was only possible because of this incredibly ruthless defense strategy.
That's right. They introduced medical doubt, they exposed the motives of the witnesses, and they just systematically demolished the victim's character. So the justice system found him innocent of the crime. But the media, the morality crusade, they convicted him of indecency and executed his career. In 1920s Hollywood, it turns out the court of public opinion was the only one that mattered.
And this leaves you with a final thought to mull over. Later, researchers on this case have warned, and very strongly, that so many of the historical accounts we have rely on unreliable, impossible to corroborate, and biased reporting from the time. So considering the incentive to sensationalize every single lurid detail, you have to ask how much of the history we accept about this case is really just a consequence of what sold the most newspapers in the days right after the tragedy.
This is the brief on the jury's exoneration of Roscoe Arbuckle. So after 3 huge, highly publicized manslaughter trials over the death of actress Virginia Rapp, the jury didn't just find silent film star Roscoe Arbuckle innocent. No, they did something pretty much unheard of. They issued a public apology to go along with their acquittal. First, you gotta appreciate the speed of this decision. After a full month of evidence, the jury went to deliberate. They came back with a verdict in just 6 minutes. 6. And get this, they spent 5 of those minutes just writing their official statement. That tells you there was 0 debate. Second, the jury explicitly said that, quote, acquittal is not enough. They wanted to completely clear his name, stating that a great injustice had been done to him. They found there wasn't, and I'm quoting here, the slightest proof adduced to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. And finally, they publicly backed Arbuckle's character. They said they all believed the straightforward story he told on the witness stand. They basically called the whole thing an unfortunate affair for which he was in no way responsible. They hoped the American people would accept their judgment that he was entirely innocent and free from all blame. This historic document didn't just end Arbuckle's legal troubles. It was a powerful plea for the public to accept he was completely innocent,